change sizes with the color of your running shoes. They have lots of bling, their pants are baggy, so of course their boxers show, and you always wear 2 t-shirts together, as apparently you never know when the police might chase you and you might need to take off the top shirt to get away by having a second shirt of a different color. Of course, the laundry is unbelievable. These boys hang out in my basement and they play the latest rap music loudly and delight in my profound dislike for the music and the sweet smell of Mary Jane that always seems to accompany it. All this on the surface is harmless enough and common enough. After all, I thought they would outgrow it. But here is where my personal story may differ from other white mothers, as these boys started to smoke pot 12 times a day to deal with the sadness of divorce, absent parents, undiagnosed ADHD, low self-esteem, and poor school performance. Some started to sell drugs and work their way up the dealer hierarchy until they got addicted to the lifestyle that came with the money and the connections they were making. It's pretty intoxicating, they tell me, to sit in Porsches owned by big sports stars as they purchase drugs from you. They lied to their families about money, sold stronger street drugs such as ecstasy to younger kids with no regard for the risk or harm. They dissed young women, thought about making money from pornography, were beaten viciously by other young men in the neighborhood, and were threatened by the police, who said they wanted to take them to the filtration plant and beat them up. They were arrested and charged with assault, use of counterfeit money, possession, trafficking of drugs, and carrying a weapon, which fortunately in one case was only a switchblade knife purchased for protection instead of the gun they really wanted. They went to court, and because of their privileged backgrounds, they were able to afford good lawyers and get off the charges, although some did spend time in jail. Their families generally supported them and walked with them through the tough times with unquestioning love and deep compassion, if not at times frustration and despair. They were the incredibly lucky ones. No one got really hurt. They did not kill each other or other boys wearing red or blue do-rags. They did not pimp out their girlfriends, although some of the girls got into stripping in clubs with the young men trying to make profits off them. They did have death threats made against them. Most of these young men stopped dealing drugs, and some even went to college. Some continue to make money off rap music as they sell CDs online through L-Side Entertainment Company, and they've made Johnny Crack, who sang that song, a funny and widely popular parody of big-name rappers. However, some are now addicted to cocaine. In sharing my story, I really want to repeat this is one story from a white, upper-middle-class, and extremely privileged part of Toronto, and I tell it to put a personal face on one aspect of this case. These boys could clearly change out of baggy pants and again become the clean-cut white sons of privilege, which many other boys cannot do. Versions of this story with much more tragic outcomes are happening all over this city. As a feminist mother, I fear we risk depersonalizing ethical decisions, and business can say, oh well, this music's no worse than country music, or worries that this music really hurts anyone, are all theoretical, or we don't have enough research yet, or this is all freedom of speech, and that overrides everything else. For those of us who are personally seeing the way the rap culture is adopted and enacted in our homes and with our beloved children, this is more than an abstract question. But simply telling 50 Cent he cannot come to Canada will not help us. As many of the early feminists pointed out, in situations where there are personal problems that are also political, there is no personal solution. I alone and other mothers and girls and boys alone cannot address these issues. Based on this, my challenge to you as the audience now goes beyond asking the question, what does business promote? And instead I ask, given that all business promotes, what are the real human impacts of that promotion? And how can business help address these impacts with compassion and an open heart?
Same 3 questions. Everyone's voted? We can close? No? Okay. Highly relevant. Next question.
Has this changed now from the last time you voted or from the original time?
No, there's no change. Are you changing? Is your position changing on the basis of this this decision, or this material rather? Okay, and the result is no. Okay, the third question. Again, I guess we already know the pattern, but. Okay, we'll see where we come out. Okay, close it. Very interesting. Last presentation.
Can you hear me now? My position is, not surprisingly, somewhat different from that of the other members of the panel. Let me begin by underlining the point that the issues surrounding the 50-cent controversy are far from new. In fact, they go back thousands of years to antiquity and fall under the general category, how to control the influence that shaped culture. This issue was most lucidly explored by the great philosopher Plato in his 5th century BC masterpiece, The Republic, one of the most influential works ever produced in Western culture. As a professor of philosophy, I would like to show how Plato had contemplated such dilemmas long before the printed word, let alone television, Facebook, and YouTube entered the picture. So what would Plato have done with 50 Cent? I can tell you that he wouldn't have wasted much time in having him censored, and most likely would have dispatched him to a reform school. That's because Plato was deeply concerned about the power and influence of music. Let me explain his reasoning and then get back to the question at hand. What would Plato have done had he been at the helm of Neil's promotion company? As many of you know, the Republic analyzes the educational or cultural reforms required to create an ideal society in which we would all flourish as individuals according to our own natural aptitudes. In his vision, role models, those who influence the masses, are of paramount importance. The reason why Plato was focused on reforming education is because he felt that the role models at the time were inadequate, indeed detrimental, to helping followers become good people who would themselves eventually contribute to the greater good of society as a whole. Specifically, Plato wanted to reform what was then traditional education, which consisted of two things: music for the soul and physical fitness for the body. Now, in Plato's day, music had a different meaning. It took the form of poetic performance and was the primary form of communication. So it's fair to say that the poets back then were even more influential than today's rap or rock stars. What's worth exploring at this point is Plato's controversial position on poetry.